Talk about consent and allegations, sexual assault, rape, and allegations overall have just been floating around the internet for quite a while now, and everybody seems to be talking about allegations, consent. Has Me Too gone too far? Holding people accountable for not, abiding by people's consent. Has that gone too far? Are we getting to a point where women, mostly, have been given way too much power over men because they could just claim they've been raped, and then boom, you can ruin a man's life? Is that the point that we have truly gotten to in our society? Well, I don't think so. Frankly, I do not think so. My humble opinion is no. I don't think that most women could just end any guy's life at a whim with false allegations. That doesn't seem to be an actual issue on any wide scale thing. Though I will get into false allegations in a little bit, and I will talk about them in a moment. But I was scrolling through Twitter the other day, and a mini viral post sort of inspired me to want to do this segment. What is your take on this? And it's an image. I assume this isn't a real thing that's in production, because this would have absolutely no legal weight behind it, and it has so many flaws to it, it's beyond count. But I'm going to go ahead and give my thoughts on it after you read the tweet. So, sex consent card. I am having voluntary sex. I am not drunk or high. I am over 18 and I am STD free. Date, male sign, female sign. Men, keep this in your wallet with a condom. With this card, do not accept an Article 15. Only give this card to your lawyer. Do not confess to the MPs or your boss. Demand a lawyer. So it is probably a good thing to get a lawyer if you get arrested. No matter what you do, the first thing you should do is get a lawyer. Yeah, this is clearly a British thing. Honestly, I'm a little bit more lenient on this because in Britain, this card probably, culturally speaking, is probably a little bit less ridiculous than it is here in America. Because in Britain, I'm pretty sure, right now, men literally can't be raped in Britain, legally speaking. I'm pretty sure by law, penetration has to occur for the person being raped has to have been penetrated by a penis for it to be rape. So men cannot be raped by women at this point, legally in the UK. Obviously, this is a big part of the TERF ideology in the UK. If you are someone who's watching this right now and you think that's a problem, you think it's fucking bullshit. If you think it's fucking bullshit that in the UK, legally speaking, a woman cannot go to prison for raping a man because they don't have penises, at least according to the people running things in the UK, then you can blame TERFs on that. Transphobes are the people to blame for that. Radical feminists who hate trans women have pushed this type of policy very, very hard in the UK, where they have a very strong political foothold, and it causes not only trans women to suffer, but also men, because it's all anti-male, motivated thinking, right? They think trans women are men, and they think men are all rapist, evil, disgusting monsters, so they push policy that both hurts men and trans women. So, hey, maybe if you're a guy watching this right now and you think that's bullshit, maybe you got more in common with trans people, and particularly trans women, than you thought in regards to your political enemies. Anyway, let's talk about a consent card. Is the concept of an agreement that can be verified as physically existing, and a physical proof of consent, is that a good idea? Now, on surface level, that sounds obvious. Of course, yeah. Of course, if you could get a piece of paper where the person who is engaging in where both people engaging in any sexual behavior are both writing down that they consent, obviously that would make things so much easier on surface level, right? Without looking into it, you would think that's a great idea. However, this idea does not hold a lot of water for a variety of reasons. Now, the first and most obvious reason is 99.999% of women will not have sex with any guy who presents this card to them. If I were a woman and a guy presented this card to me, I would immediately assume that as soon as I signed this card, I was about to get raped. That would be the immediate assumption I was about to have. I would run if I were a woman in this situation, okay? So even practically speaking, guys carrying around these cards are going to be at a massive disadvantage for getting laid, unless they are enormously wealthy or enormously hot. And in those cases, at least with the enormously wealthy, they don't need this card anyway. So I guess this card maybe could work for like the fraction of a 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 fraction of guys that are so overwhelmingly hot that no matter what they did, any woman would be down to have sex with them. But that's a pretty rare circumstance. So I think just on a practical level, this card's not a good idea. Or like the idea of a physical proof of consent isn't really a good idea. Now let's get into the actual like legal side of things as to how this won't actually help you. So, sex consent card. I am having voluntary sex. I'm not drunk or high. I'm over 18. I'm STD free. Now, obviously, these things could all be lies. And obviously, if you have examples of any of these things being lies, or if you can like prove that she signed the card or that he signed the card or that they signed the card and that they lied about these things, that could certainly help you in a situation. It is nice to have, confirmation that they're not drunk, high, under 18 and that they're STD free. However, the I am having voluntary sex part doesn't really work because, as you should know if you've ever had sex before, consent can be withdrawn during sex. If you walk up to a girl and you're like, hey, you want to fuck? And the girl's like, yeah, I want to fuck. And you go back to the hotel room and you start fucking. And then halfway through the girl's like, yo, I don't want to fuck anymore. You got to stop. You got to stop doing it. If she says, please stop, you got to stop. You got to stop fucking. If that's what happens, even if the card's been signed, because I'm sorry, but, like, it's still rape. Like, legally speaking, that is still rape. And the card doesn't protect you from that. Like, do you have to have an after-sex card? Like, hey, maybe if you guys want to invent an after-sex card that also has to be signed, that says, I just had consensual voluntary sex and I wasn't drunk or ate, maybe then we could get around it there. But I don't know. I feel like I feel like the discussion around this card shouldn't be being had around this card because the existence of this card isn't born out of a real practical problem. Let me give you guys some insight. The biggest fear of just about any woman is that they'll be raped. Like, that's most women's biggest fear. Like, practically speaking, if they go out in public and they're in a shady area and something bad could happen, or they're going on a date with someone they don't know, like, the most realistic worst case scenario for them, their biggest fear, their most realistic biggest fear is always they could be raped. However, when it comes to situations like that, a guy's biggest fear a lot of the time is not necessarily that they'll be raped or sexually assaulted. Not that there aren't men who are raped or sexually assaulted, but for most men, the big worry is, what if a woman decides they want to ruin my life and just decide to accuse me of rape to do it? Well, makes you think for a second, right? If women's biggest fear is being raped and men's biggest fear is being falsely accused of rape, then there's clearly a contradiction in desires here, right? It clearly men and women just broadly don't seem to be on the same page, sociologically speaking, insofar as like these issues. Now, obviously, not every man is like not every man's biggest fear is being falsely accused of like some sexual impropriety. One of my biggest fears is certainly that, being falsely accused of some shit like that, because I'm a YouTuber, and I'll get to that more in a moment. But for most dudes, this isn't really a real issue. Don't get me wrong, there's been examples of nobodies in the past who've had women make false accusations against them, but most of those stories end up getting huge because they're that crazy. They're that, like, it's that wild of a concept. They end up getting huge. They end up getting a ton of attention. They get blown up in the media. It doesn't really happen that often, right? However, when it comes to rape, actual rape, there are, like, probably hundreds of women, mostly children, I'd be willing to bet, being raped right now as we speak. Somewhere in the world, that is happening. Right now, I'd be willing to bet there's probably not somebody right now being falsely accused of rape by, like, someone claiming to be the victim. Like, right now, in the world, at this current second, statistically speaking, I would not bet that there's a guy right now being falsely accused of rape by someone who is falsely claiming they're a victim. However, I'm willing to bet basically everything I own, including my life, that there is a woman somewhere in the world being raped right now, for real. So I think that should give you some insight into how realistic the fears that people who push the idea of we need to have sex consent cards or some way of confirming that consent was made. Like, I feel like people who claim that claim is coming from a fear of exactly that. And it's just not a realistic fear. Now, if you're a YouTuber or a streamer or a celebrity, maybe that fear is a little more realistic because now there's something for people to go after you for. There's actual motive. Like, there's an actual strong motive. And when it's the court of public opinion and not the court of public law, sometimes an accusation is all it takes to ruin someone's livelihood. So there, I completely accept YouTube. I was the victim of that. People tried to accuse me of shit like that falsely. And thankfully, I had a lot of evidence on my side, so I was able to debunk it pretty definitively. But nonetheless, it was still a thing that happened. I got hit with those false allegations, and frankly, when I was a younger kid, when I was like a teenage 15-year-old white dude, I was terrified of that kind of thing happening to me, and then it did. So you would think I'd come out of that thinking, well, fuck, these sex consent cards are a good idea. We do need to find a way to make sure that men feel safe engaging in sex with women, and both women and men feel safe engaging in sex, so men don't feel like they might be falsely, accused, and women don't feel like they'll be raped because they have a card with them, right? But it just doesn't really, work out that way in real life. Not to mention, like, there's so many ways that these cards could be, like, faked. You could fake a signature on one of these cards easily. I don't know. It just doesn't really seem like that's the end-all be-all, right? You can still coerce people into signing a consent card. Exactly, of course, right? Like, you could obviously still, like, convince a child. If you're like a pedophile, you could convince a child to sign that card claiming they're 18 or over, and then in court bring that card up and say, well, they signed the card saying they're 18 or older. They lied to me. I was lied to. Like, and then, of course, there's the withdrawing of consent. Like, yeah. The reason I wanted to talk about this wasn't necessarily because I wanted to talk about the consent cards themselves, but more so because I want to acknowledge the fundamental gap in, like, empathy between a lot of men and a lot of women in our society, and that, like, I don't think most women realize that most men fear being falsely accused, and I don't think most men understand just how much most women fear being raped or sexually assaulted, etc., right? And that sort of disconnect is more so what I wanted to acknowledge with this segment and what inspired me to cover that particular tweet. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, please feel free to leave a like on it. It helps the video out a lot. And of course, like the stream as well if you're watching right now live, because YouTube promotes the stream more if it's got more likes on it. It's completely free, so just hit the fucking like button. Why not? And of course, if you want to see more from me and you want to support the channel, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell icon to turn on all notifications so YouTube actually tells you when I go live or upload a new video or anything like that. And follow all my social media linked down below, including my fan Discord, TikTok, Twitter, and my Instagram. And of course, if you want to support your favorite streamer, Xanderhal, financially so I can continue to keep on putting out this lovely content you love to consume, then please consider donating over on my website, xanderhal.com/live, or subbing or gifting a sub, or donating through Streamlabs. You can also support me on YouTube and Twitch, but no matter how you support me, whether it be through a like, a comment, a view, or even a donation, thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you all again, and have a good one.